contain any report about what an opposition member might say. Question number 7, beg your pardon, number 6, the Honourable David Parker.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. My question is to the Minister of Local Government. Does he stand by his statement, quote, "We require councils from the next election onwards to put out a financial report in plain English"? I think if we had had that reporting procedure some years back, we might not have got ourselves into some trouble with councils in light of the increase in the gross debt of the Auckland City Council during the mayoralty of John Banks.
The Honourable Rodney Hyde.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. Yes, I do.
The Honourable David Parker.
Is the Minister aware that under John Banks, rating increases for the Auckland City Council were held at falsely low levels by the greatest ever increase in debt?
Point of order, the Honourable Gerry Brownlee.
Speaker, this line of questioning really does cause us, I think, to reflect on your most recent ruling, because there is clearly no point in asking this Minister what he thinks about a mayor's policy. He has no responsibility for that. And it is, if the other question was blatantly trying to get into political point-making, Mr Speaker, there could be no better example than being given by David Parker at the present time. Shouldn't be allowed to stand.
Well, I'll hear briefly from the Honourable David Parker.
Point of order is that he has not heard the full extent of my question, sir, and it plainly does go to ministerial responsibility.
The Speaker has heard sufficient, and the Minister has no responsibility whatsoever for the actions of the Auckland Mayor. He has no responsibility whatsoever. The member may be able, and the member will recollect some actual thought went into the primary question to try and get it in order. And I'd ask the member likewise to try and make sure his supplementary questions are in order. The Honourable David Parker. The point of order, the Honourable Trevor.
Mr Speaker, with due respect, I know what's in the end of this question and you don't. And I find it extraordinary that you're ruling out a question from a senior member who has taken some time to construct a question which goes to ministerial responsibility before you've heard it.
Well, I'm certainly not going to remove the question from the member. I'll ask him to repeat his question, but please to make sure it's in order. The Honourable David Parker.
Is he reinforced in the concern that lay behind his statement, given the reality that in New Zealand's largest city, Auckland City Council, rates were held at falsely low levels by increasing council debt by the greatest amount ever in New Zealand's history, from $322 million as at 30 June 2008 to $1,149 million as at 30 June 2010, an increase of over $1 billion in 2 years under John Banks?
The Honourable Rodney Hyde.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. No, funnily enough, and the reason is that ahead of the reforms, the Treasury functions across the various councils in Auckland were amalgamated. Ahead of the reforms, and Auckland City Council took on that role. So they borrowed $416 million, which they then on-loaned to the other councils, saving them considerable money because we had just one council, and they also borrowed another $215 million on behalf of Metro Water Limited, which they then on-lended. If you net that out, you'll find that the trend for debt in the Auckland City Council is exactly as predicted. And in fact, Auckland City Council, in taking on that function ahead of the amalgamation, saved Auckland ratepayers some considerable money.
The Honourable David Parker.
Does the Minister still hold with his other statement, quote, "Councils take on debt largely without the awareness of ratepayers. They can actually delay the consequences of that debt for some years, and we are now having to deal with some councils that are being forced to put up rates"? And does he enjoy the irony as much as I do that the worst ever borrower in the history of local government is now the intended lifesaver for ACT, and John Key's telling national voters to vote for him?
The Honourable Rodney Hyde.
I do stand by that statement, but actually, as I said, the member may not have heard my answer, is that in the case of Auckland City Council, they were borrowing on behalf of all of Auckland, and actually lent the money on, again saving the cost of the additional borrowing for those councils, and I would have thought that would be a good thing, and in fact a far-sighted move by Mayor John Banks.
The Honourable David Parker.
Has the Minister considered allowing councils to fund deficits like the one created by John Banks with a tax on cannabis, in keeping with the latest puff of genius from the ACT Party?
The Honourable Rodney Hyde.
Mr Speaker, unfortunately it's impossible to answer that question without repeating myself, and it shows you the danger of a member preparing his questions ahead of hearing the answers and actually getting caught out with questions that don't bear any resemblance to the Auckland City Council's final accounts, which showed you that what that member's saying is not true.
Question number 7, Pesitas. Point of order, the Honourable...
Point of order, I seek leave to table a document showing that the Auckland City Council...
Order the source of the document.
A concerned ratepayer, sir, drawn from the Auckland City accounts.
Order. A point of order is being heard.
I seek leave to table that document showing council debt increasing from $322 million to $1,149 million over that 2-year period, not all of which is explained by Mr Hyde.
Leave is sought to table that document from a concerned ratepayer. Is there any objection? There is objection. Question number 7, Pesitas Amlor Tuiunga.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. My question is to the Minister of Housing.